Welcome to Conversations with Toy, a blogcast tackling life one episode at a time. This is the time to air out life's craziest moments. This space is all about speaking about life's hang-ups and ways in which we can leave better than when we started. Topics are all about ways we can find space to be better in life, love, mental space, and health.
Happy Friday. I hope that you have had the most amazing week because you are absolutely deserving of that. If this is your first time tuning into Conversations with Toy, I want to be the first to welcome you. I am Toy of the podcast Conversations with Toy. I am not only a podcaster, but I am a blogger and a content creator here in Philadelphia. And I do not believe that things just happen. I believe that if you stumbled upon this episode or you stumbled upon this podcast, there is something for you. We are in season 10 and we have plenty of content. What can you expect to hear from myself? You will hear conversations that most people would shy away from, especially when it comes to mental health and self-care, because mental health is such a serious and sensitive topic. Most people would not want to talk about their struggles. Most people would not want to talk about their failures, that they feel like they failed in the midst of their pain and their struggle with their mental health. Listen, with mental health, there could be good days and there could be bad days. And for some people, when they have a bad day, it feels like it's like the worst day of your week. It's the worst day of your life. It's the worst day of whatever time frame you want to place that in. And so I won't shy away from those conversations. I also do bring in sometimes guests as they share their stories. And the reason they share their stories isn't to say, okay, I'm better than so-and-so, or I've gotten and I've arrived. The reason that they share their stories is to help you. I hope that whatever you hear on this podcast will resonate with you, makes you feel seen, makes you feel heard, because that is the whole concept. One thing that I will share before we get into the episode was that when I first started to realize that I was having mental health issues, and it started with postpartum depression, by that point, I had already had so many outbursts. By that point, I felt like I had lost a few friends. By that point, I felt so misunderstood. And I was, because I didn't even understand it. Still am learning to understand myself. And with mental health, you know that every day is not the same. You will have your moments and you will also have good days. Like, I hate the fact that when we start talking about mental health, we start talking about it in a negative light, because there are so many beautiful things that I've learned about myself during my mental health journey. I've learned so much about the things that I like. I've learned so much about what I don't. I learned about my triggers, and learning my triggers helps me to respond to my family, especially my children. It helps me to respond to my husband. It helps me to respond to myself. I can put checks and balances in places that before would just be overtaking. So please don't look at mental health as such a horrible thing, because I do believe that a lot of us struggle with things. And I feel like sometimes because we talk about it so often now, because it's acceptable to talk about it a little bit more, that sometimes we only look at it from the negative. There is a lot that you can learn, that you can grow from, that you can heal from. And we know that healing is not linear. So that means there could be times when you feel like you're stepping 10 steps back, even though you've made 20 steps ahead. Trust me, it happens to the best of us. But during those step backs, during those times where you feel like you're walking yourself back and trying to walk through your truth, please understand that, again, I can't stress this enough. You will, and can get through all the things. And I know that a lot of people are not willing to speak about their mental health. And I understand that. I say I speak for like the lorax and the trees. Like, I feel like I speak for those people who feel like they can't or don't have the strength to speak up for themselves. For the people who don't know how to formulate and put things into words, even though you see me struggling from here and there. Like, I want to make sure that you know that on this podcast, on this platform, and any other platforms that I am running, I want it to be always, as much as possible, a safe space. Now, with it being Friday today, there's a lot of national holidays. If you don't know, I tend to look up the national holidays quite often, if not daily. One, because I feel like that's a great place for content. So just a little, 5-second note for those who consider themselves to be a content creator, those who desire to be a content creator. A lot of times you can get content just from national holidays. You want to look for things that resonate with you. You want to look for things that follow in the niche. Your niche is what you're deciding to be, have your platform be about. For instance, mine is lifestyle and mental health and wellness. So anything that deals with lifestyle, anything that deals with mental health and wellness, I like to talk about. Today's national holiday is National Get Organized Day. Let me just say something about being organized. I think I've been very organized since possibly in the kindergarten. Like, I started off very early. I am very particular about certain things, where things stand. However, I don't always live with everyone who feels the same way. Okay. However, when I lived by myself or with certain roommates who aligned with the same thought process that I did, my place was it was immaculate. Everything was in its place. Now, one of those things that I realized throughout my journey with mental health is that a lot of times when you feel like you cannot control, this is especially important for people who grew up in households where parents didn't allow kids to be as verbal, didn't allow them to express themselves. You will find some type of way, or most people will find some type of way to control something. And my way of controlling was two things. I can control my education and my dedication to my education, and I can control my living situations, meaning my living spaces, keeping it clean, keeping things organized. And so those types of two skills, which are great things to have, are a part that I've realized, and a part of my mental health and journey was that I was trying to control. Now, I'm not telling you that because that was the case is that you shouldn't try to keep your house clean, because yeah, that's important. I'm not telling you that you shouldn't be organized, but I also don't want you getting to the pattern where if something does happen where you can't control certain things, you get a surgery, you can't keep everything 100% clean because you're, still healing. Or let's say something just, I don't know, happens outside of your actual control, that it doesn't break you just because you have this brief moment of not being able to do certain things. And when I was younger, if I felt like I couldn't control certain things, if certain things didn't go the way that I planned, in the concept of organizing my place or my drawer or my desk at school or whatever the case may be, it would frustrate me, would make me really flustered. I would get so worked up. My anxiety would increase. I have nothing wrong with people being organized. Like, I'm still a very organized person. If I showed you my planner, you would be like, how and why? So I'm very organized. And then after I went to college, and even before I went to college, I was an amazing assistant, an executive assistant working in the C-level suites. And you have to have the organization of like 10 people in one, because, when you have the vice presidents of companies and presidents of companies and owners of companies relying on you to basically keep everything going, those skill sets do not just drop off. I use those same skill sets for how I create content. I have things organized as much as possible. But again, I also have learned to allow certain things to just simply happen. This last month, I would say I've missed out on so many different events because there were things that were happening that I could not control. One of the things that happened that I could not control was the fact that I got sick twice. And in those sickness, I ended up missing about 6 to 7 events, which is very abnormal for me, especially for the organizations that I work with, especially for the clients that I have. It's just abnormal for me. But I realized that if I didn't take the time to rejuvenate, if I didn't take the time to take care of me, there was no way that I could be at these events and not be at my best. And so it's times like that really do strengthen. But when you are in the midst of your mental health issue, I hate to call it issue, but your mental health journey, I find that sometimes organization is one of those last things that either you're on point or you just don't lack it. You just don't use it at all. Now, this is not to say that every disorganized person means that they have a mental health issue. It does not. But when you find that, again, you cannot concentrate because you're so caught up in things that are going through your mind. You're having things happen on your heart that just seem like it's an impossibility. These are when certain tools will come in. For instance, therapy is going to be one of my first go-tos. Also, I've started doing some group, like almost like a group therapy, but even online, where it's in a certain platform called Circles. And I've been talking about Circles for a while, where you can be on the confines of your phone. Nobody needs to know that you're in there. You can participate communicate verbally, or you can type it in. It's almost like the Clubhouse for mental health. And I like those types of resources. There are times when you may need to talk to your family doctor. I believe at the beginning or the end of last year, matter of fact, I don't even have to think about it. In November of last year, I knew that seasonal depression was going to come. And so instead of waiting for it to hit and then feeling like, what am I going to do? I went to my doctor to discuss what can I do to prepare for it. Again, these are all tools, but sometimes when you're in your mental health journey, you don't always think ahead. You can't always see the things that needs to be seen. And sometimes you can't even put together your thought processes to do the normal everyday things. I know sometimes when I would get depressed, getting in the shower would be hard. Me eating and taking care of myself, being active. Those are things that you don't always think about, because when you're in the midst of your mental health journey, those are the last things that you care about. You're worrying about the stress levels that you're in. You are overcome with emotions. It could be sadness that overtakes you. It could be something that you are reliving from your childhood or some type of other part of your life where it overtakes your thoughts and you can't concentrate. So with today being Getting Organized Day, please take a few steps. So one, recognize where you are. If you are like, listen, I'm trying to make sure I can pay rent, I can't even begin to worry about certain things. How about we just take a few steps? One, I would say to you, if you are struggling with certain things, especially when it comes to finances, one of the things that helped me, and I'm talking about when I was in my show enough financial, issues before I even got married, was to one, excite help. So I would go and I found a financial counselor. I found one for me that was free, and you can find them. Trust me, get on your Google. You're already on your phone. Google out some help so that even if you can't, you may not resolve your immediate issue, but it can give you the help for the overlining issue. And that's what I mean by taking small steps. Getting organized is a beautiful thing. I think everybody should. I probably will be spending some time, not this weekend because I will be traveling, but maybe next weekend to reorganize my work area. Because even as I'm looking at it right now, I'm like, you know what? We can shift a couple of things. We can donate a couple of things. We can get a couple of these products out of here. We can maybe do a giveaway, whatever the case may be, because then it helps me to be organized, to get everything together. One thing I will say though, when you do have a mental health journey, is that getting organized and having things flow a little bit better, it literally does lift off some of that emotional weight. But again, getting organized is not always as easy. So take small steps. You may want to say, okay, I need to clean my whole house. There's so much stuff that I need to get rid of. Okay, so let's take one room at a time. Right before the whole spring cleaning hit, my husband and I and the kids, we did hit the house pretty hard. Like, we hit the house pretty hard. We really went through and we did everything in one day because there's 5 of us. So we were able to divide. We were able to give out certain things for everybody to do. And I mean, everybody was hands on deck. Now, it did take us a long couple hours and it was intense, but to look back on it now, it's helping us now that every time we come in the house, we just have more clarity about things and where they should be. Those are what I'm talking about as small steps. So you may not be able to clean the whole house, but you can take a room at a time. You may not be able to even do a whole full room, but let's take a space at a time. Maybe we go through the junk mail. Maybe we go through the junk drawers. Maybe we go through certain things and we clear spaces out. Getting organized is important. It does help you in your mental health. But again, if you're not at that place where you are able to see that, I am encouraging you to get the help that you need. Again, mental health is everyday occurrence. It's not something that you can just pick up and drop off. You probably will still go up and down in your healing journey, probably until the end of time. But what you can do is you become a little bit better equipped. I know that I used to look at my journals because I do journaling a lot, and sometimes I would look at it and I would recognize certain patterns. So I could tell by certain times of the year when I would get more frustrated. For me, like even with Mother's Day coming around the corner, I was born on Mother's Day, 1981, and one of the things that I recognize is that around Mother's Day, I get really, really worked up. And I have 1,001 reasons as to why. But me recognizing those patterns by checking into my journal, I could see, okay, listen, November, December, that seasonal depression is going to hit. Let's start being prepared for it. Okay, Mother's Day is around the corner. So we know there's certain emotions that's going to come up. How do we find ways to fix that? So let's go ahead and find ways to fix that and get that all situated. Those are things that I think about. Those are things that I try to work through. you. And I'm hoping that that encourages you. Anytime that I personally share anything with you when it comes to mental health and wellness, it's not because I've arrived and I know everything. It's so that I hope that it encourages you and incites you to find ways to help yourself. Now, this week in these internet streets, we do want to talk about this rap beef that keeps continuously going on between Chris Brown and I believe, is it Quavo? Yes. Listen here. I know that this is just like one of those things that continuously is showing up on every platform, TikTok, which may not even be here very much longer, as well as Instagram and Facebook. As soon as you log in, you see these same stories going on and on and on. I just can't understand it. I mean, it's a lot going on. You know, I didn't expect Chris Brown to come in and do his rap and do the things that he did and body the way that he did. And I definitely, Quavo, I don't know if that was really the answer he should have given, because I felt like it was kind of weak. But here we are. It's being all over the social media platforms. Honestly, the whole back and forth thing between, it's not even just those two. It's all these different rappers are having all these beef. And listen, I understand in hip hop, back into the history of time, has been always about certain beefs, like certain territorial things and happen and be saying who's number one, who's better than each other. I get it, but it sometimes becomes draining. So God bless all these little rap beefs that keep in dramas that keep happening. All right. And also Jelly Roll, which his real name is Jason Bradley DeFord, decided to come off of social media. Jelly Roll decided to come off of the internet because he was being bullied. His real name is Jason Bradley DeFord, and he was being bullied because of his weight. He is a country star, and his wife goes online to talk about how he decided to come offline because of the fact that he was being bullied. Here's the thing about being bullied. It definitely does mess with your mental health. 1000%. And especially when it comes to weight, because here is the thing. This is the one thing I learned even with like doing the dozens. And if you don't know what doing the dozens is, back in the day, it would be where you and another person going back and forth, and you're basically making fun of each other according to what you can see. And 90% of the time, whatever is physical that somebody can see, such as weight, such as, you can have acne, a big head, whatever the case may be, people will talk about that, and they will continue to hit it until it either makes you mad or gets underneath your skin. And that's just how it goes. Here, I don't agree with bullying somebody, but people do this crap all the time online. Here, you have to wonder and ask yourself, would you be willing to tell this person to their face some of the things that we type, some of the things that we say online? So many people have, the computer trigger fingers where they decide to just keep tapping away, saying things mean, malicious, and rude to people. I had the same thing happen when I had a guest 2 weeks ago, Joy Carter. We had her on the podcast. We were talking about, she's on a reality TV show. We were talking about her shows. And the second I think I posted the first post where I was pretty much just like saying, hey, she's going to be on the episode. She's going to be at City Winery. She had came in April. And I started to look at the comments, and there was a person that went underneath there, and they're typing out, oh, you're a beautiful woman, but you need to worry about doing your hair. You need to worry about doing this and that. And I'm just saying to myself, why do we do that? We keep telling children that they shouldn't bully each other, but we as adults don't always get it together or have it right either. Going on somebody's, it's like you saw this post that I posted because me and her were collaborators on the post. So it's on her page, it's on my page. But I did hide that comment because I 100% do not agree with certain things like that being out in the atmosphere. But you would go on somebody's page, you just happen to be scrolling, you see something, it resonates with you, and so you feel the need to comment. Commenting on somebody's body and their ability and what they can do, what they look like, is just crazy work to me. Because here is the thing. While you're commenting on Jelly Roll's body, for those who are doing this, while people were commenting on what they think Joy Carter should look like as far as her hair and her all these different things, I need to know what type of energy you are putting on yourself. Because listen, I don't know if I need to break this down to you, but I don't have enough time in the day to find time to be mean and malicious towards somebody online. Okay. By the time you get up and you try to meditate or pray before you get up to start your day, you try to not to be on your cell phone first thing out of the bed. You want to get yourself together, pull yourself together to be clean and do all the things. If you have a family, you're trying to get everybody out the door where they need to be. Then you need to work, because you don't work, you don't eat. So you got to figure out a way how to do that. Then by the time you start adding in things like, being good and a good worker at your job, and you start adding in like, I need to work out, I need to eat right. Once you start adding all those things, and then God forbid you need to count up the water that you're drinking, where do we find the time? Where do we find the time to just to down people? I mean, I see we make the time, right? And this is why I say people will do what they feel they need to do, and people will do what resonates with them. This is why I don't personally accept people making excuses saying I don't have the time. I just rather you say, I just didn't make the time, because that's the reality of it, right? Because we spend time online scrolling and scrolling, me included. But to find time to make a negative comment, I have been really working to make sure that I'm conscious about those things. Like, would I say that to someone's face? 9 times out of 10, you probably wouldn't. And although people say, well, you shouldn't be a star and not think that you're going to get somebody talking about you, or you shouldn't come on the internet putting things out, because you know that the second that you do, that people are going to talk. Yeah, we do know that that happens. We do know, but it doesn't make it right. And your mental health could be to the trash, worrying about dealing with the fact that, again, people are so rude. They're so inconsiderate. They don't think about the words that they say. They wouldn't want somebody saying that to their dad. They wouldn't want somebody saying that to their mama. And mamas is like, that was like the number one thing. You don't talk about nobody's mama. Because as soon as you start talking about somebody's mama, then it's the cards are off the table. And just like moms, children used to be off the table too. But I find, and I said this in another episode, as I was talking about a family member, we were having a discussion about something. It's amazing how like years later, that same person was involved in the same thing that they were trying to break the one person down for. But once they came at me about my child, I never dealt with them again. And here's the thing. It wasn't about them saying things like in general that anybody about would know or say certain things about, but it's the fact that, why are you bringing my children who are innocent? My kids don't even know. Like, I'm telling you right now, even though this is a family member, my kids could not ID this person if their life depended on it. If they lined them up, they wouldn't be like, that's my family member, I know that person. My kids wouldn't be able to do it because, one, there's been way too many years that have gone past where they have not had any access to this person. And at the time, my kids may have been able to wave at them and recognize them at an event, but that's about it. And kids used to be offline, but they're not. So again, even when that happened, as a side note, this is why you got to learn. This is when no contact is good. I decided to go no contact with this particular family member. And although I've made some strides with certain family members, this particular one, I have not, and I don't choose to do so. Because again, if you wanted to, you would. And so if I wanted to, I would. And I'm honest about the fact that I don't desire to. And I feel like, again, sometimes we say things to people that we know good and darn well, if we saw them in person, we would never go to someone's face and say these things, because we don't want that stuff coming back to us. And let's be real. People are going to say that Jelly Roll, he knows that he's a certain size, and Jelly Roll knows that he should do certain things. I don't know what Jelly Roll is going through. Just because Jelly Roll is considered a celebrity in his own right, doesn't mean that he's not human. And just because Jelly Roll is slightly bigger, or not even, I won't even say slightly bigger, but a bigger person than a lot of others, that doesn't mean that anyone has a right to tear him down because of his weight. And I'm sure he is aware of where he stands, right? I'm sure of it. But people thrown in your face every 2.3 seconds don't make it better. Like, we don't show compassion. We talk about people like a dog. We get online and we use our Twitter fingers and our Instagram fingers and our Facebook fingers to say things that I find are so inconsiderate. And what if the one comment, like, think about that in real time, your one comment drove somebody to end their life not because you were the end all be all, but because you happened to be the last person that took them and basically had that last chip on their shoulder, and it blew off and they couldn't take it. Your comment. And you don't know when your comment is going to affect somebody. You don't know what you say is going to affect somebody. So my rule of thumb is, one, if you can't say something nice, don't say nothing. If you can't say something nice, don't say nothing at all. That's a rule that most children have learned since they was children. They've learned that, to not say something mean and malicious. If you can't say something nice, don't say nothing at all. And I try to do my very best. The second thing is, again, if you cannot and would not say that to the person's face, and if you cannot and would not want them to say that to you about anybody that you feel is dear and near, don't repeat it. And if you can't, throw hands too. Just so we're clear, if you can't throw hands. Because 9 times out of 10, people don't always have the same self-control that they're supposed to have. Like sometimes I struggle with self-control, and I haven't gotten to the point where I wanted to go slapping people around, but you never know. People are unhinged these days. People are unhinged, and you say the wrong thing to somebody and you say the right thing to somebody and they go off the deep end. So I wouldn't want to take those chances if I were you, but see, I'm not you. So I just want to encourage to know that people's mental health are not always in the best place, and talking about somebody's physicality is just not where it's at. But this week we do have an amazing guest. And listen, this episode particularly was one of my favorites. We have Ella Shae, and she has her new book, From Broken to Beautifully Broken. And she talks about her struggle with eating disorder. And one of the things I love about this conversation is that she doesn't pretend to have it all together. So let me just say that again. We talked about this earlier in the episode. She doesn't pretend to have it all together. As she is in her journey and continues in her journey, she talks about the ups and downs of discovering and healing from her eating disorder. And she's had this for quite some time. And on this particular episode, we talk about what is self-care. Again, we should know what self-care is because it's now one of those buzzwords that we hear all the time. And again, I know for personal experience that self-care has been one of the most life-saving things for me, especially it's a huge part of my healing journey. It's a huge part of my therapy journey, and it is just incorporated into my life. But sometimes we believe that self-care are manis and petties, and it's really not. Like, don't get it twisted. I do love a good mani and petty, but self-care is something that you need to learn. What do you need at that very moment? So I am so grateful to have Ella Shae. She is talking about her book. She talks about her life. She talks about what she learned in the most broken state. And again, while she continues her journey, she talks about what she is accomplishing and the things that she is just doing. And I just thought this conversation was so beautiful. Let me also give just a little bit more context behind the scenes. When we recorded this particular episode with each other, it was crazy because we both had things that we were doing, and we made the time obviously to meet. And then I literally had to record in the most craziest way in my car, but it was one of the most beautiful, and I do mean that, one of the most beautiful conversations that I've had in a long time. It was very clear. It was very concise. We tried to encourage. And again, it's not about me. It's not about Ella Shae. It's literally about how can we encourage someone else. So I hope that when you listen to the rest of this podcast and listen to what she has to say, I really do hope that you get inspired. Like, the whole conversation is to inspire. And I pray that that inspiration will lead you to a better journey with your health. So without any further ado, I want you to take a listen to the conversation that Ella Shae had with me. And I hope that you enjoy. All right, Conversations with Toy Family. We have an amazing treat. We have Ella Shae. She is here. We are going to be talking about self-care in a way that you already know how I feel about self-care. I feel like it's a priority. I make it a priority. I've been encouraging you to make it a priority. It is a great part of your mental health. It's not something that you tap into once something happens. It's something you tap into so that you have a go-to for when things happen, you have something else to add to it. And with that, we have an amazing guest who's going to talk about her story, some things that happened with her amazing book. She's going to hear and talk about all the things. So without any further ado, I want to welcome Ella Shae. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much for having me. How are you?
Amazing. So I want to jump right into your story and then bring it forward to the book and all of the things that you've learned throughout your situation. So I want to talk about the car accident. I know that you experienced a very traumatic car accident that propelled you into another level of things, and then it just brought you to where you are now. Let's talk about that. What all happened?
So when I was 4 years old, I was in a nearly fatal car accident, which when you read my book, a lot of people think was sort of my first crack or what essentially may have broken me. But because I was so young, the scars that I was left with after this car accident are something that I was used to. It was something that was always with me. So I didn't think that there was anything different about me. The car accident was very bad. I was left with over 500 stitches on my face. I lost almost the entire right half of my face. My eye was split open. My nose, my lip, it was a bad situation. But it did leave me with severe facial scarring. I I was told that at some point in my life, I could have, further surgeries cosmetic wise, but there was nothing necessary at 4 years old to do cosmetically. It was more just the survival part of it. And it wasn't until probably around middle school when one of the boys started calling me Scarface. And it was the first time that I ever felt that my scar was even visible, because it's not even something I paid attention to in the past. So to know that other people were looking at something that I hadn't even really acknowledged, and not just looking at it, but feeling some type of way about it, really put me into a tailspin. And it stuck with me for quite some years. And that was essentially my first crack. The car accident is something I survived, but the bullying and the teasing and all of that stuff was really what propelled me into all of the snowball of issues I had the rest of my life.
It's amazing how junior high is usually people's first time when they're dealing with that. The bullying and you start becoming more insecure about your body. You start to recognize your body because other people are recognizing your body. And I feel like so many people, that's kind of like where they start as well. And it's unfortunate that happened, because kids, I don't even know if they mean it. It's just, they just go to the physical. They just go to whatever they could see.
Yeah. And you know what? At the end of my book, I talk about my last chapter is the things that I can't stand that people always say. And one of the things is, everyone's always saying, oh, you look so beautiful, or, oh, you look so pretty today. And I think that it's very important that we compliment each other on, the things that we're capable of rather than the way that we look. And I think it will change a lot of things. Like, for one little change like that is going to make a huge difference, when I was going through my eating disorder and somebody would say to me, oh, you look so beautiful today, or wow, you look great, they were only fueling my eating disorder further. So when you make compliments like that, you really don't even know what's going on inside that person's head. So instead, we really should stick to, a person's, what they excel in, and, their brain, and, what they're really good at, not just how they look. I think that's important.
I love that messaging. So let's fast forward to, junior high was the part where you said that was your first break. And then you talk about the eating disorder. Can you talk about, like, when did you know that you were actually dealing with this eating disorder? Or was it just something that you just thought was normal and then discovered that it was? Like, how did you come about to that?
So I did not even think that I had disordered eating my entire life. It wasn't until I went into treatment, just 2 years ago, that I realized other people thought the same way around food that I did. I thought that I had made up all these rituals myself. And, when I finally went to treatment, I realized, oh my God, other people do that too, and so I can think back to, my freshman year in high school, not eating lunch in the cafeteria with everybody else because I was scared of being made fun of. And at a certain point, that became something I could control. I couldn't control what everyone was doing to me, but I could control if I had to be around them. So I avoided them in any free time whatsoever. And that sort of morphed into me paying more attention to my body so that people would look less at my face. So I figured if I really could control the way my body looked, then people would look there first instead of my face. And there's so many instances of, tendencies that I had my entire life that I really look back at now and realize. And I did not know, honestly, until 2 years ago, that I had an eating disorder for 16 years. Or maybe
Oh, wow. I was
Probably.
not prepared for you to say that. But yeah, that's a thought. Because I've always wondered, do people realize it? Because, it's like so much information, there's so much technology, and there's so many stories and things that we read and we see. And I'm like, do people realize it now? Like, oh, I have this issue, but I can't stop. Or is it just like, it's normality for them, so they don't recognize that it is a problem?
You know what I think it is? I don't even think it's about recognizing or not recognizing. I think that an eating disorder is a symptom of something larger. So it's usually a coping mechanism for something that's in an internal struggle. So something that they're struggling with mentally is coming out as an eating disorder. So it's very hard to decompartmentalize everything that you're going through to figure out, hey, I have PTSD, which is causing me to need control over something, or hey, I have anxiety. So, it's very hard for somebody to do that without the proper guidance or, professional to help them do that. So, when people are controlling their food intake, I think that that's just a coping skill for something larger. So even if they did acknowledge I'm not eating well, I don't think that they would be able to acknowledge the mental health end of it on their own regardless. So they would always end up back in that place anyway.
Okay, that makes sense. So how did the book come about? Because I'm just curious, where did that come from? How did you, decide, okay, this is what I'm going to do. I want to know all the things. Like, how did you just start? What was your start?
So when I went into treatment, I went in kicking and screaming. I did not want to go whatsoever. And I thought I was going to be one of the oldest ones there. And to my surprise, I was not. There was people my age, there was people older than me, men, women, like it was not anything of what, your stereotypical idea of who's in an eating disorder facility would be. And I was not about to tell my story. I didn't want to talk about it. I was going through the motions to appease everyone who sent me there. But once I realized that the other people who were there that would tell their story actually made me want to tell mine. So they created this environment, this safe space for me where I felt that it was okay for me to tell my story. So once I realized that, I thought, wouldn't it be great if I could create these relatable moments for everybody, that when they read my book, they'll relate to something in it, and then that will help them find their voice. So I started writing. It started a lot as the journaling during my eating disorder that then sort of morphed into the book. But even as I was writing it, I didn't really have any intentions of publishing it. It was more like a therapeutic thing at first. And then I thought, I think I really could change some people's lives if it's really hard to put yourself out there with all of those personal stories. And then having to relive them every time you do an interview or, a speaking engagement. It's very hard to do. However, the amount of messages that I've received from people saying that I've changed their lives or I've influenced them in some way makes really all of it worth it. So I'm glad I did it. But it took me a very long time because I had to step away from the computer during some chapters for a while. I would start to talk about something that happened in my past and it would be hard to get through. So sometimes it took me a month to write one chapter because I would take the breaks that I needed, to get through those tough memories.
I mean, I think that's actually a great thing to do. I feel like sometimes we're just like in a go, go, go. Everything has to get done and it's got to be in a certain timing. And the fact that you were able to recognize, like, I need to like decompress. I need to just step away and come back. I don't think you realize just how many people don't do that in their everyday life. They just continue to push and push. And sometimes it's not good. It's not good for us to just push through.
No, I think it's really important to take time, like you said, for, self-care, even if it's in the smallest way. I think that it's important because, during COVID and lockdown, I really was so worried about my children and making sure that they were safe that I started to lack that self-care for myself. I started to go into a little bit of a depression, which I had in the past. I just had a baby, so I had probably postpartum depression as well. But I really just eventually stopped getting dressed, stopped seeing friends. And that's when my eating disorder kind of spiraled. So that lack of self-care is definitely a piece of the puzzle. People say to me, if you've had an eating disorder since you were, 16 years old, why did you need treatment now? Like, why did it never get that bad in the past? And I think that's the answer is that, when I was younger, I didn't have to care about anybody else besides myself. So I practiced self-care all the time. as a mom of 3 kids, I didn't have that little piece of the puzzle. That self-care is sort of, I think, what put me over my threshold and got me into that danger zone. So I think it is very important to make sure you put yourself first sometimes.
I do want to talk about that. Let's put a pin in that. I'm gonna come back to that because we have similar stories about. I have 3 kids too. My postpartum depression was my awakening moment because that's what I recognized when I felt like I was at my wit's end. I was at the last knot of the rope, so we share that. So I want to come back to that, but I do want to talk about. We never mentioned the title of the book, Broken. And I want to get it wrong. Broken into beautifully broken. Is that correct? Broken.
Right. From broken to beautifully broken.
Correct. I'm sorry. I didn't want to butcher that up, but I love the title of that because I feel like so many people feel like when they're in their most broken state that they don't see the beauty in things. Mm-hmm. Like they don't see the beauty in themselves for the biggest part of that. And I like the fact that you recognize that, okay, I may be broken, but I'm beautifully broken. Like I'm not going to sit there and say that I'm just like this horrible shell of a person that we feel sometimes when we're in our darkest moment. And we're more reactive to that.
Yeah. And I don't think anybody can really say that they're without flaw, right? I mean, I've never met somebody who's perfect. So at the end of the day, everybody is broken in their own way. And that's okay. As long as you can embrace it and you can find the lesson, in the situations that you've been in. And as long as you're able to change your perspective and pull yourself out of it, then that's fine because, all of those, so to say, broken pieces of you can fit back together in a different way, the moment that you change your perspective on those situations from your past. And you are in control of your own life. So you can change the trajectory of your life as many times as you like. You're never stuck in one position. And I think that you're right. Nobody's ever going to be perfect. Your situation may not be right for you at this moment, but you have control over it. So change it, learn from your past, learn from your mistakes, learn from the things that were done to you, and choose to turn it into something beautiful for yourself in the future.
Absolutely. But let's go back to that self-care because one of the things that I know is that sometimes people make self-care this huge thing. Now, there are times when you can tap into this beautiful, long process of self-care. You may have the funds for it. You may have the time for it. You may have all the things. But there is something about the fact that I have been stressing to people, and I know you feel the same, about showing people that self-care can be literally a few minutes, that it can be some of the most simplest, but the most needful thing. I mean, there's times when I personally have noticed that my elevation of my spirit, like everything's kind of going left, and simply saying, you know what, I'm going to take a 20-minute nap is my self-care for right now. And people make self-care because the industry now has caught on. The industry is now caught on to self-care. Self-care now no longer is a cuss word. It's something that people embrace. And so because people are embracing it, there's this money and monetizing behind it that makes it sometimes attainable for what people think self-care is supposed to look like.
Yeah, it's kind of frustrating because they're really trying to sell self-care as something that you can purchase through workshops or yoga or this or that, when in reality you don't even know what your self-care is going to be for that. You don't even know what you're going to need for that particular day. Sometimes your self-care is emotional self-care. Sometimes it's physically something you need for self-care. It could be a mental break from something. So you don't ever know what it is that you need until you're in that moment. Maybe I just need a few minutes to myself in the car to listen to some music just to decompress. Or, maybe I need no one to talk to me for a few minutes, at night so I can, read my book or whatever the case may be. Those things are inexpensive. They're not something that someone can sell to me. They're something I can do on my own. And self-care really shouldn't be unattainable for anyone due to finances or anything like that. So I think you're right. The industry has caught on to this word. And, since self-care was always viewed as being selfish, especially as a parent, now that it's not, people are, taking advantage of like monetizing on the word. So you're
Yeah, I
definitely
mean, again, I get it. If I could go to the spa, that's great. But reality of it is that if I'm in, and I tell people this all the time, if let's say I get an email and that email has rocked my spirit, it could be something that I was hoping for, looking for, and that email is telling me no, that I can't attain to something right now, and my spirit is broke. I don't have time to hit the spa just so I can feel better about myself. I don't have time to go get a mani pedi just because I just want to, like there are times when you can only have 5 minutes and it may be a moment to write out your feelings in a journal because your emotions are overwhelming you, or I don't have a journal on me, which I do try to keep on me, but I could just use my phone and use my notes section and just write out my thoughts. Like that
It's
is
so
what
funny. I
self-care
do that all the
is.
time. I literally do that all the time. If I'm driving and I just like need a minute, I feel like wherever my next destination is, I'll just pull open my phone. If you look at my notepad, there's a million different notes there that I'll probably never need to look at again. But in that moment, I needed to get that thought onto a piece of paper, and that's how I did it. And maybe that is my self-care for the day. You're right. And it really does depend on how my day went. And if you're going to wait to go to a spa or wait to get a massage or wait to go on vacation to call it self-care, then you're going to be waiting a very long time. You need to figure out how to help yourself in ways that are feasible, every day.
Right. It has to be something that you can do right at that moment. I mean, I have been trying to explain that to so many people because again, I'm all for those other wonderful parts when I can do them. And those I feel like are my extended self-care. But when it comes to my mental health, me taking a mental break, um, pouring back into my cup for just a few moments. And like you said, we're both moms. As moms, we're usually the last because we're going to do everything that we can to make sure that our children have whatever it is that they need. It doesn't always have to be monetary things, but just getting up and making sure that their things are in line and preparing things and doing all those things. We are always on the go. We're always the Uber parent, the chef, the janitor, we have all these different titles. And sometimes if we're not conscious of taking that time out for just a moment, we can too get overwhelmed, which I'm sure we both have done.
Yeah. And I don't think that I ever would put my kids last. I think that's also a misconception. Like, oh, look at her. Like, she's doing all these things for herself, but, she should be doing things for her kids. I'm still always going to do things for my kids. I'm still always going to put them first, but I'm also going to make time for myself. There's a happy medium to things. And I think that it's very important that you find that happy medium because your kids still need you. Like I have a 4-year-old, he still needs me, but also I need me. So I have to find that happy medium.
Absolutely. And sometimes it comes at night and sometimes it comes during the day and sometimes it's first thing in the morning. Like it's whenever I can get it. And I feel like too, not being afraid to say that I need to put fill my cup up too. I feel like, I don't know, and I don't want to know, you don't have to tell me your age, but I know like my mom was more old school where it was like, no, we always did for our kids. You're not allowed to do this. I remember when I took my daughter with me. I don't even know where I took her. It wasn't even anything strange. She might have been like 6 months. And my mom was like, well, why are you doing it? And I'm like, oh, I just needed a break. So I'm taking her with me so that her other grandparents can take her for a couple hours. And it was like a big thing because it's like, you're not allowed to, you're supposed to be doing all the things. You're not allowed to take a break. And that's definitely not happening here. I'm taking whatever I need to do so that I can come back in and tap right back in to be who I need to be.
And I think it's important that you have this, platform to speak about it because a lot of people, it could be a cultural thing. It could just be a generational thing. But a lot of people do have, that perception of parenting that, you cook, you clean, you take care of the kids, and then you just start all over again the next day. Like, if my grandmother was still alive, she would be asking me like, what? You're going to get your nails done in the middle of the day? Like, where's the kid? It's a generational thing. And I think that it's very important that, we use our voices for people who probably are still in that generational, or cultural spot with their families and don't realize that it's okay to do something for yourself. I think that it's great that you have this platform to do that.
Now, I know you talked about, and I think it comes up in the book about how self-care can make you be a better person. It makes you a better person for whatever your titles that you hold in life. And And I 1000% agree with that.
Yeah, I mean, how can you be your best self if you're not taking care of yourself? I always say it like this too. Like, I have a daughter, she's going to be 18 in 2 weeks. And the things that I do for her, why wouldn't I want to do those things for myself? Like, you're supposed to love yourself just as much. So, why not do those things for yourself? Why do your kids deserve it, but you don't? So I think that it's important to realize that, like, just because you take care of other people, you still need to take care of yourself. And sometimes I forget, sometimes I'm having a tough day, and it's really important to have a support system that thinks about you. You need people who do care about you and love you and can remind you, like, hey, if you need a minute, like, I'm here to help. I think that's important. A support system is a huge thing, especially for me struggling, with my eating disorder. I think that it's a huge thing to have people who can take notice if you need some time to yourself and you're forgetting.
I know that's right, because we do tend to forget. There's 1,001 things to be done.
Exactly.
Yes. Now, where can those who are listening, those who are really tapping in, where can they find your book?
So I have my book available on my website, ellashae.com. Anyone who orders the book from my website will get an autographed copy with a message from me inside of it. Or you can get it on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Target, Walmart. All of your major online retailers have it as well.
Now, for those who are listening, and maybe this is your first time tuning in with Conversations with Toy, let me be very clear. I always put any websites, all of the things, all the links to get to Ella Shae. You can get everything in the show notes. So if you're working out and you're listening to this, you're folding laundry, you're listening to this, you're doing all the things and you can't write this down, do not worry. You're just going to click on the show notes and you will find the website. You're going to find everything that you need so that you don't have to struggle, worry, or think about it. We got you covered. Now, what is one of if you had 3 top things that you do for yourself as a form of self-care, what are your 3 top things? What do you find yourself doing the most?
It's so silly because, some people are going to think that they're so minor, but one, I love to read. And, I wake up in the morning when my 4-year-old wakes up. So my day starts with parenting right away. So when he goes to bed at night, I really, really need some time just I like to read my book for a little bit. But, I also want to spend time with my husband, with my kids, not around, to have some conversations and catch up on, each other's days or whatever. But before I do that, I want a few minutes to myself to read my book. So that's one thing. Another thing is journaling. I think that I know it sounds so childish to say journaling, but more so, get my thoughts down on paper, because the more I keep them bottled up inside, the more I'm nervous I'll turn to my, disordered eating tendencies. So I make sure to take some time to write. Like I said before, even if it's just on my iPhone. And the last, my kids. So that's the other thing, is self-care doesn't have to be just about you. You can practice self-care with your kids. You can practice self-care with your husband. It doesn't always have to be just you alone, because I think that can kind of be a little lonely. But, dancing in the kitchen with my kids and singing and acting silly, that really is a form of self-care for me, even if it's not by myself.
Absolutely. I love hanging out with my friends too. Sometimes that's fun, and just to be around other people and engaging with them too. Like you said, I think that's a beautiful thing.
Yeah, laughing and having a good time, like anything that, I would love to hang out with my friends all the time. It's just not going to happen. So I can't say that, being with my friends is my form of self-care. That's what I'm going to do. No, that's impossible. Like, once in a while when I can do that, that's great. My friends make me laugh. I love my friends, but my kids live with me, so they're fun too.
Absolutely. If there was one last message that you wanted to leave for someone who was listening, what would that last message be?
If you are struggling with something and you aren't sure whether you should really talk to anybody about it, or you're on the fence about, maybe starting counseling or therapy or whatever the case may be, I urge you to use your voice, to find the strength that you need to get the help that you need. I think a lot of us are walking around with all of these, mental health struggles and don't want to talk about them because they're, still unfortunately a stigma. And unfortunately, there's a taboo on certain topics. And I really do urge you to use your voice and get the help that you need. And if you're scared to take that first step, I promise if you email me or DM me, I answer every single person who messages me if they need help with doing that. So please, I urge you to do that if you need to.
I love that. I love that. Well, I want to thank you for taking your time out to talk with us, to share not just the book, although that is a valuable resource, but to share your heart and just to be vulnerable. Like you said, it's not always easy to put your story out. It's not easy to tell it 2011 times. But like you said, I hope that there is, and I want everyone to listen who is listening to this podcast, is that if you stumbled upon this episode, I always say this in every intro, that if you listen to this episode, it wasn't by accident. There's a reason why you listened. There's a reason because you needed to hear this message. And because you need to hear this message, and I'm sure that it resonated with you, I want you to share the message with someone else, because it's not about me. It's not about Ella Shae. It's about helping someone. Like, our job is just to use our story to help. And if somebody's listening and they feel empowered and they feel like they've gotten the lesson, that's the part that we want to make sure it sticks.
100%. I love that. I really hope that, anyone who's listening right now, that at least any part of my story has resonated enough with you to give you that final little push to, take the step forward in whatever it is that you need to improve your life.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you so much for being here. And I can't wait. For those, again, who are listening, make sure you're going to go get that book. It's going to be in the show notes, and we just cannot wait.
Thank you so much. I had a great time speaking with you.
All right. So what did you think about that episode? Again, I hope that it was inspirational. I hope that you got something from it. I hope that you also realize that, again, you don't have to have it all together. You just have to be willing to continue to try and do your very best. I want you to do something beautiful for yourself this weekend. I get it. Weekend time comes and it's literally time for me to refill things in the house that needs to be refilled. It's time for me to change things and reorganize, do laundry, meal prep. It does all those things. But I want you to find one activity that you truly, truly love that will build you up. It could be something as simple as reading a good book. It could be as simple as taking and maybe sleeping in a little bit on Saturday. Whatever it is, find one activity that is exclusively for you, meaning it doesn't have anything to do with your titles, has anything to do with other people always being involved. Just find something that you enjoy. You should never go back to work on a Monday and feel like you've done absolutely nothing, unless doing absolutely nothing was your goal. And I do have those goals sometimes. I'm so excited sometimes when I don't have to be anywhere. On a Sunday when I can actually sit in some pajamas, which I haven't done in so long because I'm on an Uber parent lifestyle right now. But the days where I can sit in my house and literally go nowhere is bliss for me, because I'm always in these streets. As a blogger and content creator here in Philadelphia, I get invited to so many amazing, amazing events. And that also means that I am ripping and tearing, as my grandfather would say. But don't go back on work on Monday and not have done something for yourself. Not filled your cup in the least way, not done something that put a smile on your face. Again, I can't stress this enough. So have the most amazing weekend. I have some fun things happening this weekend. It's going to be a little interesting. I can't talk about it right now because I want to make sure that I'm always safe and I don't let people know every one of my moods every single time. But you may want to follow me. You might find out some things if you follow me on Instagram and all my social media platforms. And with that being said, I will talk about that conversation. We'll talk about what happened this weekend next week on the podcast. There is going to be a special guest because Mother's Day is coming around. And if you need a little bit of help on what to get mom, because, moms really just want the time to really rebuild themselves and get things for themselves. And I know moms are not supposed to be selfish. They're supposed to be for their kids. However, as a mom that does all the things, I feel like I work hard for this family. I feel like I do all the things that is possible to make sure everybody's lives are good. I do enjoy that one beautiful day. I get more than one day because my family, my husband is an amazing partner, really. But that one day is always dedicated and geared to me having that rest. I'm not cooking on that day. I'm not cleaning. I'm not going to do anything that's of service to anybody else. I'm going to allow the ones that are in fellowship with me to love on me and give me that rest and allow me to rejuvenate and fill my cup. And having that full day of dedication to me, and I know it sounds selfish, but it's not, is one of the most beautiful things. But I want to thank Ella Shae for being on this episode. I want to thank you for listening to this podcast and always, listening and tuning in. Thank you for your contributions because, listening and sharing and reviewing is 3 ways you can help this podcast grow. So thank you for all of the things. I want you to have the most amazing weekend, and we will be back next week with Conversations with Toy.
Thank you as always for joining me, and I know that even in the deepest or joyful conversations that there's something we can learn and apply. Until next time, I hope that you are doing better. If not, we will be back to talk some more and handle it. Peace to you and yours. Stay grounded.